You're listening to the Gutsy Podcast, where we talk about all things real, raw, and ridiculous about running a business authentically. I'm Laura Wallace, also known as the Laura Aura, lover of all things inspirational, owner of Works Graphic Design, and your host on this journey through entrepreneurship. I'm here to help you get out of your head and back into action as a passionate business rock star. Tune in every Tuesday and Thursday as we fuel your gutsy. Being a female, a woman, it comes with its own challenges, right? Can I get an amen on that? But then add in the weight of having to choose between yourself and your career and your calling and your friends and your family and your insert whatever in the blank. There is such a higher calling for women in leadership and the balance that comes with that. So I'm so excited today to have Ashley Connell. She is the CEO and founder of the Prowess Project and has been an unstoppable tech marketer and entrepreneur in both Austin and in London for the last 13 years. Part fearless entrepreneur, part fearless women's advocate, she is changing the lives of frustrated managers, women seeking meaningful work, and doing all that she can to close the gender gap. And when she's not changing the world, she loves yoga, her dogs, and spaghetti and meatballs. Ashley, welcome to the Gutsy Podcast.
Hello, Laura. Thank you so much for having me. I'm pumped for this conversation.
Oh, I think it's going to be phenomenal. So the Prowess Project, I got on your website, I did a little bit of research, but tell me, what is that?
Yes. So Prowess Project, we help companies find expert talent. And the way we do that is we vet and certify accomplished women who took a pause in their career, whether that's for caretaking a parent or children or just wanting to go from in-person to remote. And then we match them up with businesses based on not only skill and expertise, but also emotional intelligence. So behavior type and communication style. That then provides the most natural fit possible, all for a lower cost for the company.
Wow. So that's amazing. That definitely fills a gap of its own. So take me back to kind of the beginning. How did this come about? What was your calling to start the Prowess Project?
So, calling to start the Prowess Project. Well, like you said in my intro, I have been a tech marketer, basically married to my career for the past 13 years. And I realized before I even graduated college, the anxiety that I was having about how I was going to choose between career and being a mom. And rewind 13 years ago, that conversation was not happening at all. And so I realized 10 years into this that, oh my gosh, there is this weight that has been on me for this past 10 years of, again, where my life is going to go. So I started a consultancy with two other men, and one of our partners, he had his wife come in and help us with some of our operations. So I got to know her. Her name's Leah. She's phenomenal. She has 2 degrees in counseling. She did sales for Merck, taught herself bookkeeping, taught herself graphic design, and took off 3 years to raise her children. She was on her 3rd year of just trying to get back into the workforce when she started working with us. And her and I were chatting, and she's like, Ashley, I can't even get a free interview because a free internship because I had this 3-year gap on my resume. And that blew my mind. It was like, this is ridiculous. So me being kind of the nerd that I am, I jumped online to see if there was any data behind this to back it up. Sure enough, according to Harvard Business Review, if a woman is out of the workforce for just 3 years, she loses 37% of her total compensation power for the rest of her life.
For the rest of her life?
Yes.
Really? Because, okay, so I'm thinking, a resume slides across the desk and they see that 3-year gap, that your work history is always your work history. So you're penalized forever now.
Yes. you're penalized because you can't get back in. If you do get back in, you're not even close to where you are. And then there's all the unconscious bias that comes with being a mom and taking that time off.
Wow. Unbelievable. So therein lies the beginning snowball effect of, what should I do? Do I put myself first? Do I do my family first? Do I sacrifice this? I mean, it gets really, really stressful for women to make a decision on what to do with their life and their career.
Oh my God, yeah, absolutely. And so when I started talking to Leah about this more and more, her and I were like, we have to do something about this. And I look at starting Prowess Project as solving my future problem. I don't have children yet, but I don't want to be in that situation, and I don't want any woman to be in that situation. So we're doing something about it.
I love it. I love what you said about preventing your future issue, but also helping women right now. So tell me a little bit about the women that are working with you. Who are you hiring, and how are you helping them to get back into the workforce?
Yes. So we started in February of this year. So we are pretty new. However, I will say that our job pool, we have a wait list right now of 40 to get in.
Really?
Oh, yes. I put out one free Facebook post on, hey, this is what we're doing. We are looking for talent of women who are educated, experienced, took time off the workforce, want to get back in. I got 60 applicants in 2 days.
That's amazing.
Yes. So definitely there is a demand. This problem is a huge one. There are a ton of women who have this. And so before we really kicked off, we did a ton of interviews. I would say hundreds, if not thousands of interviews with moms who were in this position. And they said that a lot of the solutions that were out there right now, some of them, and most of them really, are really great. However, they weren't solving the full problem for them. And what I mean by that is, from what I'm hearing, when a woman takes time off, one of her biggest barriers to re-entry into the workforce is confidence. So she can go to one place for community to talk to other like-minded moms. She has to go somewhere else for certification or resources or education to get back up to speed. And then she has to go somewhere else to get matched up with jobs that she feels empowered and works within her schedule. And so we were like, wow, 3 different places, and you're kind of daisy chaining these all together in hopes that it all works out. Why is there not just one place where you can get certification, community, and a job pool all at once?
I love this concept so much, because how much effort does it take, when you're like, okay, I've got the guts right now, I'm gonna get back out in there, and then you're faced with all these different avenues. You have to go here, you have to go there, you have to go there, and then you have to re-explain your situation 4, 5, 6 different times. So I love that you've brought it all under one roof. So you're not only helping to get these women back into the workforce and actually obtain work, but you're helping them with their mindset as well. Is that correct?
100%. So what we do, we have a certification that our talent pool applies for. If they get into the certification, there's then a 16-hour course. I would say 50% of that is confidence building. It is goal setting. It is figuring out exactly what your boundaries are, what you will and will not compromise when you go back into the workforce. It also helps you figure out, what are my skills? What drains my energy and what compounds it? And so we spend a ton of time on that. So our talent pool has a really great and sturdy foundation. So then on top of that, we can build the skills that are super, super teachable, like what is the latest technology? What is project management? What are some strategies there? It's so important to have that foundation before you go into learning the fundamentals, if you will.
Oh yeah, I can understand that 100% because if you think about, okay, let's say you there's this whole new platform that needs to be learned. If you're not coming into it with some base reignite, igniting of your confidence, and you're already feeling a little bit broken mentally, or your spirit's broken, and then also now I also don't understand the technology. I mean, that's kind of a double whammy.
Oh, absolutely. A non-starter. It's just too much. And you can't blame anyone for getting overwhelmed. And so we kept hearing that. And so again, we designed that certification to hit all those points.
Wow. What are some commonalities between these ladies that you're seeing from a confidence standpoint? And this could be just women in general as well. But I'm thinking, working women, they have ambition, they have drive, they want to do things. But what are some common confidence challenges that you're working through?
So number one, I would say is imposter syndrome.
Preach it, sister.
No, and I would be lying if I just didn't admit to a team earlier today that I was having imposter syndrome. So it's definitely a work in progress, but we see that a lot. And it's interesting because these women assume that everyone who is in the workforce are these experts and masterminds, and it's almost like their brain thinks differently, and that's not the case. Everyone is just normal people kind of faking it until you get to where you want to be. And one thing that's really interesting that we did a bit of a study on confidence, and specifically the difference between men and women with confidence. And we found that there is a different definition for a man and a woman for the word confidence. A male, it is typically fake it till you make it. And for a woman, it is typically, I have all the available information to make an informed decision. That makes me confident. So if you take a step back from there and okay, here are the two definitions, and you're going into the workplace and you're sitting in a meeting, it is not surprising that it's typically the males who are brainstorming and shooting out answers, and whether they're right or wrong, it doesn't matter. They're constantly giving input. Whereas typically it's the woman in the room who may be a bit quieter and may seem overlooked, really because she's just gathering all the information, then wants to process and then give her opinion. And so what we've seen with that is because of that different dynamic, typically men are getting promoted quicker and not only quicker, but at a more rapid pace because they're seen as the extrovert and with all the ideas, whereas that may not be the case.
Interesting. Is there any science or even just human reason why that is?
That's a good question. I don't have data to back me up off the top of my mind.
So how about just human behaviors? Why, as women, why do you think that we do that and hold back?
I think it goes back to the imposter syndrome. I think it also goes back to the idea that the workplace was built by men for men. And not that they wanted to exclude women. It's just, if you think about the top qualities that are usually associated with being a leader, they're very masculine traits.
That's true.
Think about being assertive, being aggressive. A lot of times those are rewarded, whereas being quiet or being empathetic, which sometimes seems soft, is not always rewarded.
Right.
I'm really excited to see that there is this shift in corporate America, moving from this idea that aggression is the best to really focusing on empathy and emotional intelligence. We've seen that 70% of Fortune 500 companies are investing in emotional intelligence training. So it's definitely that shift to the more feminine energy, which I'm so glad to see.
Well, that's, what we're talking about primarily today is the need for women in leadership. And I think that you hit something on the head a minute ago is, when typically when a man is assertive and, states what he wants, it's rewarded. But then here we come and we're a bitch and we're full of ourselves and we're arrogant. And who does she think she is? And she's on a power trip or she's on her high horse. I'm saying a handful of things that maybe I've heard a time or two. So,
Amen, sister. Amen.
that doesn't make it any easier when you're thinking, okay, well, I really have something to give here. Really have something to contribute, and I'm fairly intelligent in this area. I want to speak up. And then those little voices in the back of our head are like, girl, you're going to be too much. They're
Yes.
going to think something of you.
Yes. And I think that there is real power in voicing that. And having women together talk to each other about those voices and talk to each other about how they're doing this balancing act between being assertive and being a bitch, but then also bringing males into the conversation. I feel like if they had a better understanding of all of the tiptoeing that's going on in our head just when we go to a simple status meeting, they would then have a lot more empathy for us.
I agree with that. We just, at the root, I say this all the time, everything would be just so much easier if we just talked more.
Oh my God.
Like if we just got out of our heads, because when it comes out of your mouth, something can be done with it. But when it lands in between your ears and it's only bouncing around in between, in your head, that can become a whole galaxy of its own.
100%.
Especially as a woman. I don't know if you've ever seen that meme that floats around, and I can't be mad because it's true, but it's the floor plan of Target from an aerial perspective. And on the left, it has the man's path, and it's, left, right, in, cashier, out. And in the woman's path, it looks like a bird's nest. Like it's just lines everywhere. And I'm like, why are you going to be like, and I'm like, well, I can't really be mad because you're true.
Yeah, it's so true. I would be a huge liar if I didn't say I checked in the summer Target's swimsuits every time I go in there, or their jewelry, or what have you. You got to.
Yeah. So I can see how also the imposter syndrome really plays in, and I've bumped into that wall a handful of times. I can see how that would stall a lot of women from, either re-entering the workforce or going after something that they're looking for. You're intimidated by other women just as much as you are like everything that's going on around you.
100%. And we have got to get out of this scarcity mentality. And this is for women specifically. There are an abundance of leadership roles for women, especially right now where we have this spotlight on it, where we want to have more women. We know that more diversity in the workforce equals more productivity, which equals more profitability. That has been proven with data. So let's bring up our fellow female leaders with us. And I think that is so important. And I think that we now have that opportunity to do so.
Agreed. I absolutely agree. So when you're working with women on imposter syndrome, what are some tips and tricks that you give them to help overcome that?
Great question. First and foremost, I feel like that is, being vulnerable. And what I mean by that is naming it. Naming what it is that you feel insecure about. And one thing that I do all the time, I have a little sister. She is 12 years younger than me. And I do a bit of role playing. And I say, what if Avery, that's her name, what if Avery came to me with this concern that she wasn't good enough? What would I tell her? And then I'm like, I would say all these amazing things about her and why she's so qualified and that's so silly. Why am I not saying that to myself?
It's true.
Go ahead.
We are our own worst enemy. and we will throw ourselves under the bus quicker than anybody else.
Yes, and I see it time and time again, and I do it time and time again. It's not like I have all the answers. I mean, it's definitely an ongoing, I won't call it a struggle, but ongoing process to really come out of being in this imposter syndrome kind of shitstorm to quote Brene Brown, you know?
Shitstorm. I love it.
Shitstorm. And we have to, on purpose, get out of it and shift our thinking.
And I love that by being on purpose. I love what you were saying about naming it, like almost giving it a physical name or calling it out as something, because when we can remove it from ourselves, because it's not truly us, right? It's something that has either been unintentionally given to us or we have absorbed from something else.
Absolutely. I could not agree more.
What other confidence challenges are you seeing patterns in these women that are coming to you?
So one that I find fascinating is I will have women who come to me who have 2 or 3 degrees, worked in the workforce for 10, 15 years, have a humongous network, and let's say that they were out for a year and a half. They'll come to me and they're like, Ashley, I have absolutely no skills. No one will want to hire me. And that blows my mind. I look at them and I am like, that is bullshit. If anything, you have been project managing a family of 5 or 6 for the past year and a half, on top of all of the skills that you have been harnessing when you were in the workforce. And when they sit and think about it like that, they're like, oh yeah, I guess you're right. I was, running the family budget. And oh yeah, I guess I was volunteering and helping my daughter's school fundraise. I guess that kind of is like sales. And so we sit down and have this conversation about how all of these skills that were done recently easily transfer over into the quote unquote workplace.
It would make sense. And when you're saying that out loud, it's making sense that we would devalue those skills because they're not quote unquote like professional, or people wouldn't typically put that on a resume, right? Or you wouldn't think to put it on a resume. So you're automatically devaluing it because it doesn't match up to someone else's level.
That's exactly it. When really what we're finding, if you talk to hiring managers, I don't know the statistic off the top of my head, but they would much prefer someone who has emotional intelligence over someone that knew the skills, because you can teach the skills.
It's true.
They would much rather have someone who has great communication skills, who can help a team get along and be productive. And a lot of the times, that's what moms learn.
Well, it's like you're constantly like keeping the peace, right? You're trying to help one person out, and you're trying to balance that person's schedule, and things can get really crazy really quickly. So I love the phrase emotional intelligence too. I want to dig into that a little bit, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
What does that mean to you, and how are you working with women through this?
So to me, emotional intelligence is being self-aware of the people and situation around you. To me, it means noticing other people's reactions, what they say, what they don't say, and what is that really telling us? And I think that having that, harnessing that, and using that is so incredibly valuable, especially when working with a team. And let's be honest, when you're at work, 99% of the time, you're working with other people or you're working with a team. And so it is so critical to have this emotional intelligence. And I think a lot of women do this naturally. We've actually found that women are 45% more likely to show emotional intelligence in the workforce on a consistent basis than men. So we know that women have these innate skills in traits. And so what we spend a lot of time doing at Prowess Project is showing these women how valuable those traits are in sifting them out and making sure that they know to use them in the workplace.
I love this so much. Emotional intelligence, as a female leader myself, I feel is one of my greatest gifts because I lead a team of women, right? And they're all very emotionally intelligent women. But the beautiful thing about that is I can tell when one of them is off.
Yes.
Because we're not just workers, we're people. And
Yes.
our people stuff comes into our work stuff, and our work stuff comes into our people stuff. And when I can walk in the door and tell that the air is different, I can just see that someone is carrying themselves a little differently than they used to. And I can just go over and as a leader and be like, hey, what's up? How can I help you today? What's going on? And I think that's one of the most underrated areas of female leadership and just the workplace in general. Like, I think that businesses forget that people are people. We have to know what's going on with our people.
It's paramount. I mean, truly, because people are your greatest asset. And you know what's interesting? So I feel like I've been talking a lot about how great I feel like our talent pool is. But when you know that it's working and when you know that these women are top notch is when I'm getting my customers coming to me and saying, wow, like I knew that you were delivering me someone who is experienced, accomplished, and she seems like she can get along with everyone, but this is on a completely different level. And they'll come to me and be like, we have never had a project run so smoothly. We have never had team members come to us and say that they finally feel heard. And that is huge. People like working with people they like.
Yes.
And so really just harnessing that is so, to your point, underrated and something that we absolutely have to put more focus into.
I couldn't agree more. I think there's also power in strong female leaders supporting other strong female leaders because it can get really competitive very quickly, but when you bring powerful women together, really incredible things can happen. So I'm curious how that's played into, any of the experiences that you've had about women supporting women.
Yes, I have had great experiences with this. It has blown my mind how supportive my fellow female leaders have been. For example, and this is when I think you know too, there are companies that do things that are very similar to what Prowess Project does. And I was worried coming into the market that a lot of these other companies would see us as competitors. I could not be more wrong. I have had women leaders of these companies welcome me with open arms, getting on phone calls with me and walking me through do's and don'ts. Don't make this mistake that I did, and heads up and beware, but definitely do this. It has been, I'm just so grateful for that. And I was not expecting it. And so now I want to return that favor. So I get a lot of women who come to me. I mean, you could say that a recruiter could be a competitor of ours. And my answer to that is absolutely not. They're a collaborator. This problem that we're solving of gender equality and getting women back into the workforce, and then on the company side of finding expert fractional talent, those are such huge problems. It's going to take so many of us to solve them. I mean, we're all on one team, and I think that's critical.
I love how you dug into, it just reminds me everyone can win,
Yeah.
right? And I think sometimes we think, comparison is the thief of joy, right? We get on the internet, we open up Instagram, wherever you're going, and you're like, oh crap, somebody's already doing that. My idea is stupid. And you're like, okay, this is a really big ass world.
Yes.
But we see one person in one state, 3 states over doing it, and we're like, well, fuck it. That's it. I'm done. Screw everything that I've ever thought in my entire life. But there's such magic when people do what they are called to do, because not only do they do it really well, but they literally have the opportunity to shift something in the world. So if there's one of you doing it or 500 of you doing it, you're all pushing to change something. And I think that's really beautiful.
I do too. And so one thing I didn't know becoming an entrepreneur is you nailed it. When you have this business idea and you go onto Google and you check it out and, oh my God, there's 3 people already doing that. I almost packed it up and I was like, no, okay, Prowess Project isn't going to work. Someone else has it. Then I started talking to other entrepreneurs, and their answer to that was, Ashley, no, you want competition, because that proves that there is a problem out there. And that proves that the solution that you have in mind is working. And that completely changed my mindset. And it goes back to kind of what you were saying about this is a big ass world, and the flavor that of my solution may be very different than someone else's, but we have an audience for each. And that's so, so key.
That's exactly what I was just thinking. Like, literally, you just pulled the words out of my mouth. Is, yeah, there may be other people doing what you do in your industry, but no one will ever do it the way that you do it, because you're the only you. Yeah. And the beautiful thing, if you think, if, McDonald's launched the hamburger, 100 years ago or however long that's been, if every restaurant in America was like, wow, McDonald's did the hamburger, so now it's off the table. No, people innovate hamburgers, and you can go anywhere, and there's artisan hamburgers, and there's organic hamburgers, and you can have whatever you want, but it's serving different markets across the world. And that's the beautiful thing. I think that's sometimes where we put our walls up unintentionally and say, I can't because so-and-so. No, everyone's a different hamburger. We have a new analogy.
Oh man, I'm going to use that.
Go for it.
See, I'll let you know how that goes down.
Okay.
You mentioned one other thing that I definitely wanted to touch on, was this idea of when you're doing what you're supposed to do, it flourishes. And I will tell you, with Prowess Project, I had a harder time trying to not do it.
Oh, yeah.
It was really fascinating. Like the very, very early days, deciding that you're going to be an entrepreneur is fucking scary.
It's pretty awful.
Yes. Like, oh, hey, I'm going to give up this really, decent paying job that I know I'm going to get a paycheck every 2 weeks. Oh, to put myself out there, make $0 and hope that my solution is what other people want. Like, what is scarier than that?
Right.
I really don't know. And I saw in the early days, I felt like the universe wouldn't let me give up on this idea.
It will continue to present itself until you do something with it, until you literally check yourself out and say, no, I'm not. And then you shut it down, or you start feeding into it. Like one of the two will happen. And then I'm even going to throw out there that even when you say no, unless it's coming from the depths of your soul, it's still kind of like an open window in a winter house. There's still a little bit of a breeze that comes in. So it will get louder, and it will talk to you more, and it will present itself. And all of a sudden you're going to start hearing, and it's almost like when you buy a car, you buy a red Honda and you've never seen one before in your life, and now you own a red Honda, so you see everyone else's red Honda. Yes. Same scenario with entrepreneurship. I couldn't agree more with you. It will get louder and stronger until you do something with it. And until then, it gets painful.
Yes.
It wants to hit you in the face. You're like, I just want to love you, but why you want to hurt me?
And what I find is really interesting too is when I'm having one of those really bad days And I feel like, oh my God, I got to give this up. Or, oh my God, like, is this stupid? Or I'm never going to make any money out of it. Or all of these crazy things. Remember that imposter syndrome? Yeah, all of that
Yep.
swirling around in my head. I feel like every time the universe swoops in and gives me just a little bit of hope, just like a little wink that, oh, you're doing the right thing. Oh, you're doing what you're supposed to do. And I swear that little wink is what makes me wake up the next day and I'm like, all right, 16-hour workday. Yep. Let's do it. Okay. Haven't seen my friends in quite a while. My poor husband, who's that? But hey, let's do this again.
Yeah. I experience those winks on a regular basis myself. I think that kind of also plays back into emotional intelligence and being aware and knowing when something is presenting itself, because it can get really really overwhelming, and you can sink into a place where like literally your blinders are up on around everything except for the one tiny thing in front of you. So you tapping into that emotional intelligence, another great way where that comes into play is recognizing that, hey, okay, this person called, so that gives me a little bit of hope. Or I even get down into like numbers and commercials or phrases that I see on Facebook. Like I've got my feelers out for just about every sign that I've got that I'm going the right direction.
As someone once told me that when you saw a bluebird, it was this sign of hope or that you're on the right track. And I know that some of you guys are listening here being like, oh dear, where's she going? But a nest of blue jays now lives in my yard. And I'm like, okay.
Oh, come on. See? All right. You and I could geek out real bad about that kind of stuff then.
I know. I can't believe I just admitted that, but all too often I take a picture of these blue jays and send it out to my team and be like, we're doing the right thing. Onward and upward.
Sometimes I think it's a good reminder though, and I know it may sound or feel silly, but in all reality, sometimes you just have to grab onto a little bit of hope even when you're not even sure what's going on, and if that hope comes through the form of blue jays or in my case 11:11 on the clock, or whatever, there's a ton of signs. Is it going to shift the world? Is it going to like put money in your bank? No, but sometimes you just need something to grab onto while you're on the ride. Well, and if the birds are your thing to hold on to, then damn it, grab onto the birds.
Grab onto the birds. It's that thinking, right? If you put positive energy out into the world, you're going to get it back. And so it's just that quick reminder and quick mind shift, like, hey, remember to be positive because it's gonna come back to you. And so, hey, Blue Jays, I'm opening arms wide.
Open arms wide. Yeah, you know what? And I bet you there's going to be at least one person that listens to this episode and they're going to see a blue jay out their window and they're going to be like, well, son of a bitch, there it is.
I love it. Please let me know. Send me a message or something, or send me actually pictures of all the blue jays that you're seeing.
Oh my gosh, that's phenomenal. What if you get this like flood of blue jays? I love it. There's one last part that I want to dig in with you, and you mentioned it on your website and you mentioned it on your forum with me, and I love this concept and this phrase that you have, and you call it the mommy penalty. So yes. As women, we're often pressured to choose between our careers and our children. So tell me about the ladies that are coming to you that are facing that battle, because that can be very real and very deep.
Yes, we talk about this a lot. And the statistic that I brought up at the beginning, you lose 37% of your compensation power, that is the mommy penalty in a nutshell. It's also the unconscious bias that you get at work where, oh, she's a mom now. She's not going to be as dedicated. She's not going to stay long hours, or she's distracted because there's all these other things she's dealing with at home. And we don't realize that we're taking those biases and making very important decisions because of it. And that has a huge part in the gender gap, is because, again, we're like, oh, she's a mom of three. She has her hands full. She probably can't take on this promotion. She probably doesn't even want it. Like, I kind of feel bad even asking her to take on this project.
Mm.
And so we hear that a lot from really all sides, because we do a lot of conversations about gender equality in the workforce, because we want to help our talent pool understand what they're getting themselves into. And I think instead of hiding the fact that you're a mom, be proud of it. I think, again, it's going into naming it. I think that there is a huge power in setting those boundaries. Maybe you have to leave every day at 4:30 because you have to pick up your kids. That's a boundary. So if you have to leave at 4:30 to pick up your child, stay firm on that boundary, because it shows people that you respect yourself and your family, and that you're going to be 110% dedicated while you're at work, because you have a finite amount of time to get that work done. And so you're going to be super efficient. And it is very interesting how many people will respect you more because you stay true to those boundaries.
I love that. I love that, you have a certain set amount of hours, and, in the workforce, some leaders are wondering, are my teammates maximizing their time and all this stuff? And when you put it like that, it just makes so much sense. Let's just put out a public service announcement. It's like, no, look, I'm a mom. I've got other things to do. You've got me for the next 7.5 hours. Let's make it count.
Right. And what is so crazy to me about the mommy penalty is all of this idea that moms will be distracted because they have children. That could not be further from the truth. Moms are actually more focused because they now have children that are depending on them. They need that job. They need to pay for daycare. They need to pay for backpacks and put food on the table. So you bet your ass they're going to show up and be their best self in the workplace. So it's just been really interesting. And I love talking to women about this and how we can really turn that idea of mommy penalty around. And it's more of the mommy badge of honor.
Oh,
and I think that's really, really, really important.
I like it. It's like a Girl Scout patch.
Yeah.
How about those moms that, are wanting to go back into the workforce or are wanting to start a business? There's a lot of different scenarios, or maybe wanting to change careers, or, there's a lot of different reasons, but they want to work, but they feel really guilty about leaving their kids for 8 to 10 hours a day, or having to put them in daycare, or now they're going to grandma and grandpa's every day. How do you work with women to overcome that mental obstacle?
Yes, we hear this idea of mom guilt a lot. And one thing that I think is very key to remember is, if you need to work to be your best self when you are with your children, that only helps your children.
Well, that's a mic drop. That's phenomenal.
Does that make sense, though?
It makes complete sense. It actually gave me a little bit of the chills. Like, yeah, you're right, Ashley. Because I think about, I've gone through this. I started my company, when I was still pregnant, and I worked out of my house for the first 9.5 years. So I was really fortunate to be with my son. But even now, he's 12. Even now, sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm working and I've got this, but I'm also my own self, but I also am like insanely passionately in love with my child. But because I'm working, I'm happy as myself.
Exactly.
And that allows me to be a better mom for him.
Exactly. There was also a study that went out that daughters of moms who worked actually made more money when they grew up in their profession.
Interesting.
because they saw these role models of moms who were, yes, killer moms and there when they needed to be, but also took time for themselves to fulfill another part of themselves.
Yeah, because I think sometimes, when we do become moms, if we do, that's our identity now. And I couldn't actually disagree more. It's a huge part of our identity. It's a beautiful gift. But that doesn't mean that we stop being the woman that we were prior to that.
Absolutely. And if you think about it on the flip side, men aren't asked to do that.
It's true. It's
And
true.
and I am seeing so many more men who are stepping up and sharing the responsibilities of traditional gender roles and helping with the children. But just like we would never ask them to choose between being a dad and a professional, I feel the exact same way for moms. You shouldn't have to choose.
And you don't have to. I think that's a solid reminder. Is you don't have to choose. Like you truly can be both things and do them really well.
Absolutely.
Well, I feel like we could talk for days about this subject, so maybe part two in the future. But Ashley, I'm curious, what does gutsy mean to you?
This is such a great question.
Thanks.
Um, Gutsy means to me that I'm going to put myself in uncomfortable positions and scenarios and be the voice for other women who can't.
I love it. And you're living and breathing that every single day, and we are thankful for that.
Oh, well, thank you. So are you. Again, this conversation was so fun.
Oh, I love it. I love it every week. Ashley, I want to make sure that our ladies and gentlemen can connect with you. So what is the best way? How can we find you?
Yes, absolutely. So hop on to prowessproject.com. On there, you can find how you can join our talent pool, join our free community, get free resources, but then also where you can hire these amazing women who are getting back into the workforce and have so much to give.
That's phenomenal. And because we threw it out in the universe, at least somebody's going to do this. On your website, is there an email address that we can send you bluebird pictures?
Oh my gosh, I love this. Yes. hello@prowessproject.com. I will get them.
Fantastic. Well, Ashley, thank you so much. This has been such a great conversation. I love what you're doing in the world. You're helping strong women that are hungry for more to get back into doing more of what they are amazing at. So thank you for being gutsy in yourself.
Oh my gosh. Well, and same to you, Laura. I mean, yes, I'm doing the Prowess Project, but I couldn't do it without having channels and communities like you're building and your voice and everything that you stand for and talking about. So again, thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
It's my absolute pleasure. Join me this Thursday as we take our power back by nixing email outside of business hours. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it is possible. You do not have to check your email at night or on the weekends, and I'm going to share a couple of my tricks on how I make that happen. Until then, follow the Gutsy Podcast on Facebook and Instagram, and for more Gutsy insight, follow me personally at that Laura Ora. See you next time.